Hey, it's Ted McGrath. So what is Bitcoin? What the heck is MicroStrategy? Let's get into just the fundamentals and the basics. I've been talking to a lot of friends recently. People are calling me and they don't know what Bitcoin is. Two, they don't own any. Or three, they're wondering about what is this MicroStrategy stock that's going up about 1.8 for 1.8x to 2x what Bitcoin is going up at. Okay. So I'm going to talk about those today. All right. And I'm going to break it down in very simple terms. I'm surprised today that there's a lot of people that still don't own Bitcoin. I've owned it since 2018. And also I'm surprised that a lot of people don't know of MicroStrategy, and I've owned MicroStrategy, and I'm up about over 300% on my investment in MicroStrategy. So what are the two? Number one, so Bitcoin is scarce, all right? And one of the reasons why it has value is because it is scarce. And there's only 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be in existence. So when you look at the fundamentals of things that have value, gold, quote unquote, has value because it's scarce, right? But with gold, you can mine 2 to 3% more gold every single year. So if you actually calculated the future value of gold, the fact that we're mining 2% or 3% more of gold every single year, in 100 years, gold would lose about 90% of its value. Because if you can create more supply of something, the less valuable it becomes, right? We look at this recently with the dollar. In the last 4 years, a lot of money was printed. And if you had this much of a dollar, imagine it's a pizza pie, this much dollar in the economy, and all of a sudden your pizza pie of dollars doubled, which is what happened in the last 4 years, then whatever slice you had of that pizza pie is worth less. Make sense? So essentially your slice of the pie got less over the last 4 years holding the dollar. And so a lot of people are walking around in the supermarkets, the grocery stores, wondering, why are my avocados so expensive? Or you go take a trip or you go out to dinner and you're like, why is the steak so expensive today? Or why is a hotel room feel like it's double the price? Because in a lot of cases, it is. And the last 4 years of printing money has really affected your slice of the pie. Does this make sense? Right? So again, there was a pizza pie. That's all the money in the world. You had a slice of it, okay? The pizza pie doubled over the last 4 years because we printed twice the amount of money that's ever been in existence. So now is your slice of the pie stayed the same. So your slice of the pie is less, meaning just by us printing more money, your slice of the pie got less valuable. It got smaller. That is not good. So the question becomes, what are you going to do when your slice of pie, your slice of money just got way less valuable over the last 4 years because of the printing of the money? So what are your options? You could put money into gold. You could put money into stocks. You could put money into the S&P 500. Now, when you look at the S&P 500, which is the top 500 companies out there, they're all put together in a fund. And when you buy the S&P 500, you're buying into some of these 500 top companies. Okay. So over the last 4 years or so, the rate of return of the S&P has been about 15%. All right. So when you look at what's happened recently because of the printing of the money supply, the challenge today is inflation really isn't 3%. So when you're being told that the reports on inflation are 3%, it's actually not true. When you look at the true cost of what goods and services has gone up, especially the goods and services you want, it's gone up by a lot more. And you're feeling the effects of this. And when wages aren't going up that fast, but the price and the standard of living is going up very, very high, it's having an effect on businesses. It's having an effect on your standard of living. It's having an effect on your family. And so your purchasing power, your ability for your money to buy more stuff today is eroding. And that's as simple as it gets. So when you look at what's happened over the last 4 years of the printing of money, your slice of the pie is so much less today than it was 4 years ago. Unless you have chosen to invest in assets that are outpacing the true cost of inflation. The true cost of inflation isn't 3%. I got news for you, okay? It's more like 10, 12%. So it means if the true cost of things are going up by 10 to 12% per year, if that's the true cost, then if you're not earning 10 to 12% in your investments every year, you're not keeping up. If your business isn't growing in terms of your income of 10 to 12% a year, you're not keeping up, which is why you see more and more of the world getting into debt. You see more and more of the world having problems surviving, and more of the world is in financial chaos because they just don't know what's going on. Because what the reports tell you about inflation being 3% and what real inflation is, it doesn't match up. Because when you go into the supermarket and you go check out with groceries, you're like, this doesn't feel like it felt a couple years ago. It feels a lot more expensive. When you go to a restaurant and you go get the check, you're like, how did the same restaurant, which was like maybe, $300 a few years ago, was now $600, or it was $100 a few years ago, is now $200? Because most things have gotten more expensive. It's just that simple. So what are your options? Now, if you look at Bitcoin as a property, and Bitcoin's being listed as a commodity, which means it can be exchanged with other things. Like gold is a commodity, oil is a commodity, sugar is a commodity, silver is a commodity. You can exchange it with other things. So Bitcoin is on exchanges where you can exchange it, right? You can transfer Bitcoin from one exchange to the other. You can exchange Bitcoin for other things. So it's listed as a commodity, okay? And so the difference with Bitcoin between other commodities like sugar and oil and gold and silver is that you can't make more Bitcoin. There's only 21 million. So when you really think about this concept, if you're going to invest into something that is finite, meaning there will only be 21 million coins, or you're going to invest in something, let's say gold, where we mine 2% more every single year, and so when we mine more gold, it's going to lose its purchasing power over time. What are you going to invest in? The thing that's the most scarce asset on the planet, which is Bitcoin, or are you going to invest in other things that aren't as scarce? And so we all know this in, Finance 101, you want to hold things that are scarce, right? It's why certain paintings of art that are like very, very scarce, it's why they have more value. It's why when you walk into like a Louis Vuitton store and it's like, we only have 2 of these left. And meanwhile, they probably have 100 in the closet in the back. Sorry, Louis. Or maybe another store, they got 100 in the closet combined. It looks scarce. It's the appearance of there's not a lot of it, right? So the value is higher. And Bitcoin is different in its own right because Bitcoin is scarce. It's actually scarce. It's not the appearance of being scarce. It is actually scarce. Does this make sense? All right. There's only 21 million coins. Now, the hurdle of what people are trying to get over, there's a hurdle for most people. And the hurdle is simply this. Most people can't grasp the fact of like Bitcoin, I can't touch it. I can't hold on to it. And because I can't touch it and I can't hold on to it, it must not be real, right? And so how many times did people have problems with this in the past? Before there was a Netflix, did anybody think Netflix was going to be a thing? No, it was Blockbuster. I'm going to go walk into a Blockbuster. I'm going to go rent my movie. I'm going to come back. I'm going to put the thing in. It was a physical, tangible thing. And then Netflix came, and all of a sudden, boom, you could press a button, and it was there. Okay, we thought the same thing with Amazon, right? Who would have known, right? You thought you would walk into a bookstore, all of a sudden you'd get a digital book. You'd get a book, and you come home and you read the hard copy. And today, there's digital books. Okay, so what makes the people who aren't convinced that Bitcoin is here to stay, what makes you think that there is not going to be digital money? And what makes you think that digital money isn't the smartest thing to invest in at this time, meaning Bitcoin? There's many other digital currencies out there that are very speculative, but Bitcoin itself is a solid asset. It is a strong asset to hold. And it's digital. So what? How many of us thought that we would be talking on video like this right now, that I wouldn't have to sit over coffee and shake your hand and have a conversation with you? So to think that this is not where the future is going is just crazy, right? And the future is already here. And that's the thing that people don't understand. I love what Michael Saylor says. He says, bow and arrows were a really great idea. They're an incredible weapon until guns were invented, right? Wooden ships were really great. Like there would be wooden ships until steel was invented, right? So there's so many innovations that have come before that have shown us that like we are moving to a more advanced, innovative world, and we are in a digital economy right now. So to think that you don't hold digital money or you don't know what Bitcoin is, you need to get in the know, and that's the purpose of this video, okay? And the solid thing that I'm saying right now is it is scarce. It is truly the most scarce commodity out there in the marketplace, period. End of story. There is no more scarcer commodity out there, right? And even if you look at real estate is not as scarce as Bitcoin. It's not, because you could go out and you could build new properties tomorrow. There could be more supply of real estate and more buildings put up all over the world because there's more land. With Bitcoin, there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, period. That's it. That's why this is a scarce commodity. And that's why I own it. Okay. And I've owned it for the last going on 8 years now. So it makes, or going on 7 years now. So it makes sense, right? It makes sense when you look at it from that perspective of why one would want to own Bitcoin. Now, this isn't financial advice. I'm not telling you what to do, but you need to understand what this is. Now, the bigger play that's happening right now that you see going on in the economy is there are companies such as a MicroStrategy. So lots of people are investing in Bitcoin right now. At the time of this video, the price is at 96,000 or 95,694. And so that's the price of Bitcoin right now. Do I think it's going to break 100,000? Yes. Do I think it's going to go past 150,000 this year? Yes. Do I think it has a chance to go past 200,000? Maybe. Okay. But that's just my belief in it. Again, it's not financial advice. Right now, why is a company like MicroStrategy going up at 2x about or 1.8x of Bitcoin? And what is MicroStrategy? Now, this is an important conversation to understand as well, because I own both. All right. And because I made investments in MicroStrategy earlier in the year, my bag, meaning what I hold of Bitcoin and MicroStrategy, it used to be 75% or 80% Bitcoin, 20% MicroStrategy. And now it's about 60% MicroStrategy, 40% Bitcoin, because MicroStrategy has gone up so much in value. Okay. So what is MicroStrategy? Of course, I'm only talking about things that I own here. All right. So MicroStrategy, simple. Michael Saylor, several years ago, he decided that his company, which is a software company that's doing about $500 million a year, he decided that they were going to take the reserves of MicroStrategy, which was $250 million at the time, and he was going to put all $250 million into Bitcoin. Okay. Now, how does this relate to you? Stay tuned, pay attention, because if you're walking around wondering why the costs of everything have gone up, or it feels like it's gone up, or why dinner's more expensive, or groceries more expensive, or hotel rooms, and why you can't keep pace with the rising costs, it's because you can't unless you make smart investments. Again, unless you're doing 12% a year, you're not keeping up with the rising costs. Inflation is not 3%. It's not. Okay. So Michael Saylor looked at what was happening 4 years ago or 5 years ago, and he saw that he was sitting on a melting iceberg. And basically that the company, if they didn't do something with their $250 million that was sitting in cash, eventually it would erode over the next 4 or 5 years. And eventually the company might be out of business in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, but they'd be out of business. And so he took $250 million and he put it all into Bitcoin. All right. And since then, he's bought more Bitcoin and more Bitcoin and more Bitcoin. As of the time of this video, which is today, the 3rd of December, Monday, he announced that they just bought another $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. So now at this point, the company, 5 years ago, which bought $250 million of Bitcoin, now is sitting on about 40 billion or close to $40 billion of Bitcoin. And so that Bitcoin makes up the majority of the value of their company. So now the company value years ago was worth $1 billion, 4 or 5 years ago. Today, it's worth over $100 billion. So what is this company doing, and why is it actually really intelligent to pay attention to what they're doing? Now, mind you, if you look at the annual rate of return of Bitcoin over the last, since 2011 to present date, even though Bitcoin's been around longer than that, since 2011 to present date, it's about 140% return, all right, per year, okay, on average. So if you look at 140% return per year, obviously that's high. It's obviously very volatile. If you look at the S&P 500, it's about a 15% annual rate of return every year over the last 4 years. And even prior to that, it's a little bit lower, okay? So when you look at the true cost today to live, again, as I said, if you're not making 10, 12% a year on your investments, you're barely keeping up. So if I were to sit here and look and go, hey, I'm going to make a decision to put my money into the S&P 500 index, and let's say the true cost is really 10 to 12% a year of what it costs to actually live in terms of the costs are going up by 10 to 12% a year. If I'm putting it into the S&P 500 and I'm making 15%, I'm maybe making 3%. It's not that interesting to me. I don't know about you. It's not that interesting to me. Okay. So when I look at an asset like Bitcoin, I don't know what's going to go up next year. I don't know what's going to go up the year after. I don't know what's going to go up the year after. But I know in my basic knowledge and concept of it, it's going to go up more than the S&P. Now, it's more volatile than the S&P, but it's going to go up more than the S&P. And in any given time, if you held Bitcoin over a 4-year period, you haven't lost money. Because over every 4-year period, Bitcoin makes money. So when I'm looking at this investment, I would be looking at it from a 4-year time horizon. If I had no idea or no concept about what it was, if I just wanted to hold on to it, I would be looking at a 4-year time horizon. Again, this is not financial advice, right? So now you wonder, why are individuals putting their money into Bitcoin? Because if the S&P is one of the top performers and it's only doing 15%, it's literally not that interesting. And you sure as heck aren't going to outpace the cost of living owning bonds. You're actually going to dig yourself a hole owning bonds, right? Because you're talking about 5% returns. And if the true cost is 10 to 12% a year of what is really going up in today's world, the cost of living, you're going to lose money holding bonds. And you're certainly going to lose your purchasing power holding cash. So what are you going to do with your money? That's the question. So companies like MicroStrategy ask themselves that question. Now, we as individuals can ask ourselves the same question, but they're a great case study just to see what's going on. And I've invested heavily into them, and it's paid off well. Again, at the time of this video, it's a volatile stock. It's extremely volatile. But let's look at what they're actually doing. I'm going to break it down, okay? So number one, the company buys Bitcoin, okay? But here's how they do it, which makes them different. What they hold as their underlying asset and their reserve is Bitcoin, okay? They hold almost $40 billion of Bitcoin, okay? So the first thing is the fact that they own $40 billion of Bitcoin. When they actually go out into the marketplace and they issue stock, because they're a publicly traded company. When they issue stock and somebody like me goes and pays them money for the stock, they take that same dollar, right, that I give them for the stock, and they go and they buy more Bitcoin. All right? So what's happening is they're issuing stock in the marketplace. People want to own a piece of MicroStrategy. So they're like, hey, I'll pay for your stock. Here's some money for your stock. They take the money that you give them and they go buy Bitcoin. And that's one of the things that they've been doing in the marketplace. Okay. So they're utilizing your money to go buy Bitcoin. Second thing is, there are companies out there and there are institutions that want some of this volatility, want some of this upside, but literally they are not allowed to buy Bitcoin, and they are not allowed to buy the stock. So these companies are buying bonds. Okay. Now, in the simple sense of it is, when they go to a company like MicroStrategy, rather than buying the stock, they basically go, hey, we're going to loan you money, right? That's essentially what a bond is. So they go to MicroStrategy, like this just happened recently, and they said the MicroStrategy raised $1.5 billion. So a bunch of people loan them $1.5 billion. They take the $1.5 billion and they buy more Bitcoin. Now, the difference with the person who's buying the bond, they're not actually owning the stock. They're loaning the money. But at a future time down the road, in this case, a 5-year time frame. The 1 million, the 1 billion, the $1.5 billion, they can go recoup that $1.5 billion 5 years from now at its maturity date. And at that time, if they want to convert it into stock, they convert it into stock. And over that 5-year period, like the 12 years before, Bitcoin has gone up over every 4-year period. So over that 5-year period that they hold it, they're betting that it's going to go up again over that 5-year period. And so then they can take the money and they can convert it into stock and make a whole heck of a lot more money. And that is how MicroStrategy is raising the money or getting money to buy more Bitcoin. In summary, 2 ways. They issue stock. You give money for it. When you buy the stock, they buy more Bitcoin. They issue bonds. You buy the bonds by giving them money. You loan them money. The money that you loan them, they go and they buy more Bitcoin. And as a result of that, the stock, right? So the stock has been going up. So for every dollar that Bitcoin goes up, MicroStrategy has been going up an average of 1.8 to Bitcoin. Okay. So every dollar Bitcoin's going up, MicroStrategy is going up an average of 1.8. Now, a month ago, it was going up by 3. So every dollar you were putting into MicroStrategy, if Bitcoin went up $1, then MicroStrategy was going up by 3x, right? Now, this shows you how volatile this thing is, all right? So if you're not looking to hold something like this, one, this is not financial advice, but if you're not looking to hold something like this for a longer period of time, I probably wouldn't invest in it. And then the second thing is go get educated on these things, right? I'm not giving advice to buy any of this. I'm just saying go get educated. The first step for me in 2018 was getting educated on this. And I saw what was happening. And because I got educated, I watched thousands and thousands of hours worth of videos and I'm studied on this. I learned about it and I was like, okay, I understand this and I'm willing to make a bet into the future on this. So the bottom line is, in summary of what today's video is about, number one, why do I own Bitcoin personally? It's a scarce asset. Secondly, why is it misunderstood? Because it's digital and people feel like I can't touch it, I can't hold it. They feel like they can't use it, which is not true, but they feel like they can't use it. And so they don't understand it. So the first step is, in any situation, if you hear about something over and over again, it doesn't mean it's good, doesn't mean it's bad. You should go do your own analysis and study it and see what you think. Okay. The second thing is the basic fundamental of, to me, in terms of what I look at value, when something is scarce like this, and it has value as this clearly does, it's scarce. And so unlike other commodities out there, this is the scarcest commodity that exists on planet Earth. Period. Okay. Sugar we can make more of, oil we can make more of, gold we can mine more of, silver we can make more of. This is the scarcest commodity that exists. There will only ever be 21 million. So if I'm looking at this and I'm going, I want to own something like this that is scarce. I want to own something like this that has been around since 2008. So there's a track record here of 16 years of existence. And I want to own something like this that I believe in because it's decentralized and no one person controls it. And that's a wonderful thing. And I own it and I believe in it and I'm studied on it, which is why I own Bitcoin. MicroStrategy is a whole nother animal. If you know nothing about MicroStrategy, I highly, highly recommend you go get some studying on it and learn what it is. But the strategy of what MicroStrategy is doing is fascinating. And what they're doing of issuing stock, collecting money, and investing it into Bitcoin is a new thing. But this tool of issuing stock or issuing bonds has been around for a long, long time. So all they're doing is taking something that's existed in the marketplace for a long, long, long time, and they're taking it and they're reallocating it to a superior financial asset, which is Bitcoin. Okay. And if you look at the things that you may hold out there in the marketplace today, stack them up against this, stack them up against the qualities of Bitcoin. And I think if you stack them side by side, you're going to see that there's not very many assets that stack up with it. And in fact, I don't think there's any assets that stack up with it. And also in terms of the convenience of it, it's digital. The speed at which you can transfer it, very fast. Okay. And real estate, I'm not a real estate mogul or a real estate investor, so I can't talk intelligently about real estate. Right. So for those of you who believe in real estate and you do it, good for you. I know many people that do really, really well with real estate and they're very, very happy with it. And that's their investment of choice. And if that is, stack it up against real estate, compare it, take a look. What do you believe? What's the right choice for you? And at the end of the day, this is not financial advice. Just get educated, and learn. Pick something that you can know a lot about, that you're interested in, and that you believe in. And I believe in this asset. So that's the sermon for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's a lot of fun talking about Bitcoin and MicroStrategy. Obviously, there's a lot of buzz in it in the marketplace. And again, if you're brand new to it, I've been in it since 2018. So I'm very used to the volatility. I'm very used to the ups and downs. And if you're a very conservative person, you really need to study it and understand what you're doing, period. Okay. So at the end of the day, I hope this serves you. Have a great rest of the day. If you want more content on this, put some posts down below. I'm happy to share some more content on this. I got endless supply of content on these two areas, and I will see you in the next video. Stay very, very, very well.